Chapter 18. As soon as Nock's eyes opened that morning, she knew her father wasn't there. He woke early, as she did, and she'd become used to hearing his shuffle across the wood floors, the sound of his pen scratching across paper, and his regular cough, kept soft as he tried not to wake her mother. Nock lay on her pallet for a long while, looking up at the ceiling while the sunlight warmed the room. She usually woke earlier than this, but it had been a late night. By the time she and her father and a group of villagers got down to the water, the sun had already begun setting behind the mountain. They found Pong's robes floating near the shore, but no body. She'd stayed up with her father, watching the villagers drag the river with nets and bamboo poles. Mrs. Vaboon had stood with them, sobbing. "He can't swim. Oh, why? Why didn't we teach him to swim?" Nock kept her distance so no one could see her scowling. She liked Mrs. Vaboon, but she wished the woman would hush up. The more she wailed about Pong drowning, the less likely the villagers would listen to Nock and start searching the riverbanks. "There's no point," said Mr. Vaboon, holding an empty net and nearly in tears himself. "We won't find him there or anywhere else. He's gone." Nock's father looked into the dark jungle lining the shore and nodded. "There were boats in the water when the boy jumped, weren't there?" Mrs. Vaboon wailed again. "It's most likely that he was run over by the barge, sir," said Mr. Vaboon. "The robes we found were shredded. Trapped under a big boat like that, no one would survive." Nock was so frustrated. Why couldn't anyone else think it possible that a boy who had tricked everyone around him his whole life was tricking them all at this moment? She didn't know what was worse, that no one would listen to her, or that the entire village was racked with grief over a criminal's supposed death. Nock was angry at everyone and everything, but mostly she was angry at herself. She had been so close to catching Pong, and she'd failed. She slipped out of bed and went to her window. A servant was sweeping the empty driveway with a frayed broom. The carriage was gone. Nock wondered if her mother was gone too. She walked to the dresser. Her mother had packed her a dress the way she always did, even though she knew by now Nock would never wear it. As she reached out for the dark fabric of her firefighting uniform, the sunlight fell across the scar on her arm. Nock traced her fingers over the puckered skin that ran from the base of her palm almost to her elbow. She knew the scars so well. If they suddenly rose up into a terrain full of valleys and peaks, she would be able to travel them blindfolded. She had been only 3 at the time of the accident. She didn't remember getting hurt, but she did remember being tended to afterward. It had been late at night. She recalled the crush of servants around her, fussing over her, and her father's voice shouting for the doctor. "Come quick! She's in here!" And then his face, leaning close to her, his smile masking his worry. "It's all right, Nock. You're very brave. You're such a tough girl." She knew he must have been crying. What 3-year-old wouldn't cry after getting burned? But when she thought back on that night, she couldn't remember making any sound. She could only remember the people crowded around, telling her how tough and how brave she was. Most of all, she remembered her mother holding her close and sobbing. She could feel her mother's tears wetting her own hair. She could smell her mother's perfume, the scent of tuberoses that followed her still wherever she went. "I'm so sorry," her mother had wailed. "Oh, I'm so sorry, Nock, baby, sweet baby, I'm so sorry." Nock's mother's maid rubbed her back. "An accident, ma'am," she kept repeating. "It was an accident. You aren't to blame." The doctor had rushed in wearing pajamas under his coat. "Tell me what happened," he said, kneeling in front of them as he opened his bag. Nock remembered glimpsing his mother's dressing table through a gap between the servants' bodies. A shiny jar of some sort of medicinal cream lay on its side, the lid on the floor. The candle on the dressing table had been blown out already, but its wick still smoked. Her big brother stood in the doorway to the room, wide-eyed and scared. Her parents looked at each other, but it was the maid who answered the doctor's question. "The baby was playing with her mother's creams. She got some on her arm, and when she got near the candle, it caught her." The doctor sighed. All the wealthy West Side women kept secret candles to burn for good luck, even though it was against the law, but he made no judgment. He couldn't very well scold one of his best clients. "I'm so sorry," her mother wailed. "Hush, ma'am," said the maid, almost sternly. "It was an accident." Knock traced her fingers over her scars again. No one in the family talked about that night. Even though the doctor kept her secret, fire was still forbidden. It wasn't worth talking about such things and getting the whole family in trouble. Best to forget about it entirely. Normally, Knock would have been happy to do just that. She would much rather think about the future and leave the past behind, but this was one memory she wanted to hold on to. No pain, just her mother holding her close, rocking her back and forth, and the smell of her perfume in her hair. The memory faded as Knock pulled on her uniform. The long sleeves slid over her arms all the way to the wrists. Downstairs, she was surprised to find her mother awake in the sitting room, her hands folded over her lap, looking out the window. She glanced at Knock when she heard her come in, then turned her face back to the glass. In the harsh light of the morning, her cream-colored powder looked caked and dry. "Everyone says the country is so quiet," said her mother, "but these birds are deafening. What can they be saying to each other?" Knock walked farther into the sitting room and took a seat across from her mother. "Where did Father go?" "The carriage took him down to the pier early this morning. He ordered a fast boat back to Chitana. I'll go on a slower barge later this afternoon." Knock noticed there was no mention of her. She looked at her mother and waited. When her mother turned her face, it was set as though she'd been sitting at the window composing what to say and how she'd look when she said it. She glanced down at Knock's arm and sagged. Her face softened and she sighed, and Knock could tell that the words that came next weren't the ones that her mother had practiced. "Knock, your father and I have been talking, and we think it would be good for you to stay here in Tanaburi for the rest of the school year." Even though Knock had known this was coming, she still felt the words like a punch. Her mother shifted in her chair. "Tanaburi is close enough to the city that we can come visit easily. And I went to the village school yesterday and met the teachers. It's actually very impressive. You'll have a good education here." "I'm already getting a good education in Chitana," said Knock, finding her voice again. "The countryside is healthier for children," replied her mother. "The city is too harsh a place to live." Knock kept her voice calm. "It isn't harsh for me, Mother. I like it there." "You don't know how hard it can be because you've been sheltered. But soon you'll see. The way gossip runs wild in the city, it can cut worse than a knife." "I don't care about gossip," said Knock. Her mother shook her head. "You will if—" Knock held her breath, waiting for her mother to finally say it out loud. "If people find out you are not mine. You are an embarrassment to this family." Instead, her mother cleared her throat and straightened the rings on her fingers. "You'll understand when you're older." Now it was Knock's turn to forget the words she'd practiced. She had made the case to her mother in her head over and over again. She'd wanted to be very grown-up and logical, but she couldn't stop her voice from sounding whiny and childish. "I'm not trying to have that kind of life, Mama. The kind where it matters what people say about you. I don't want to be in society and do things like go to parties. I want to join the police. No one cares about the police enough to gossip about them." Knock's mother looked out the window again. It was a look that said Knock didn't know what she was talking about. "I've researched everything," Knock added, "about what it takes to join the police force. Anyone can do it, as long as they pass the exams and the physical tests. You can try out when you turn 18. Just let me try. If I fail, then I'll come back here and stay in the country like you want." Knock's mother sighed again. She seemed to be considering. Knock pressed her case. "I know I'll make it, and Father could get a recommendation letter from the governor himself." "The governor?" said Knock's mother, whirling to face her. "Do you know why your father has left so suddenly? I made him go. I wanted him to explain the situation before the governor gets wind of it. Do you know how all of this looks? Before, it seemed like your father merely lost a boy under his care. Now it's clear the boy escaped. And not only that, but he fooled a monk and was hiding right under your father's nose. Escaped. Twice. Even if they can prove the boy drowned, this whole thing has made our family look like incompetent fools. Knox sat frozen, stung by the words. She didn't know which hurt worse, the accusation that she'd brought shame on her family, or the way her mother kept saying, "your father," making it sound as though they were a duo, separated from the rest of the Sivapans. Her mother stood up in front of Knock. "You are going to stay here and go to the country school. This is the right place for you. It's a good village, full of good people." "But, Mother—" "I don't want to hear a word about it. You will respect our wishes as your parents." She took Knock's hand and pulled her up to stand. She looked down at her daughter's arm, covered by the sleeve of the spire-fighting uniform. Suddenly, she hugged Knock close. "I know this isn't what you think you want," she whispered. Knock was surprised to hear her voice quiver. "But sometimes life doesn't give us what we want. We don't get to do everything we wish, and we have to deal with what we're given in the best way we can. I know you're angry, but you'll forgive me one day. It's amazing what the heart is able to forgive." She pulled away and cupped Knock's face in her smooth hands. "I love you. Don't ever forget that." And with that, she walked out of the room.